Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to learn some terms and a law. The terms are solution, solute, solvent, what is saturated solution, what is suspension, and what is law of conservation of mass. But before we start, let us just recap what all we have learned in our previous video. In our previous video, we have classified matter into two classes, that is pure substance and mixtures. We have classified pure substance further as elements and compounds. Now, what are elements, students? In our periodic table, there are 118 elements and they all are in pure form because they all are made up of only one type of atom. Let's look for some examples. These are some examples of elements. The first example is gold. As you can see, gold is made up of only one element. So we can say that it is having only one type of atom. Oxygen is also made up of only one type of element, that is O. So it is also made up of only one type of atoms. Similarly, aluminium and silver is also made up of only one type of element, that is Al and Ag element. So they contain only one type of atom. So that is why we called elements as pure substance, because they only consist of single type of atom. There are no other impurities present in them. Then we have also classified pure substance as compound. Now, compounds are made up of two different types of elements. Remember students, compounds are not made up of same type of elements. They are made up of different types of elements, and the elements can be two or more than two. Let's look an example. So we can take an example of compound as NaCl, as there are two different types of elements in this compound, that is Na, so it is having its own atom, and Cl, it is also having its own atom, but both the atoms are different from each other. So this is how a compound is formed with two different elements, and we called NaCl as sodium chloride, that is our salt. So now you know what are elements, what are compounds, and why they are called as pure substance. Now we are going to talk about mixtures. As we have studied in our previous class about mixtures, that it contains more than one type of compounds in it, and we have taken an example of honey. A honey consists of different compounds like glucose compound, water compound, and some minerals. So it is a mixture. It's not pure substance. And we classified mixtures as homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixtures. We classified it on the basis of the solubility of the components. In homogeneous mixtures, all the compounds are completely soluble in each other, whereas in heterogeneous mixtures, the compounds are not soluble in each other. We called homogeneous mixtures as solutions, and we called heterogeneous mixtures as suspension. Now we are going to study more about these terms solution and suspension. So students, solution is a homogeneous mixture. It is made up of one or more types of solute dissolved in a solvent. Now why I am saying that it is having one or more solute? Because we are talking about mixture. Let us learn what is the meaning of the term solute and solvent here. The term solute means the substance which gets dissolved, and the term solvent means the substance which is dissolving the solute, and they both combine and form a solution. Let us learn more about solute and solvent. In this example, you will find a salt in the spoon. So we call that salt as a solute because it is being added, and a beaker contains water. So we are adding our salt to the water. So water is your solvent. They both will combine and form a solution. So students, solute is the substance that is dissolved in the solvent, and solvent is the substance that dissolves the solute. Don't get jumbled in these two words, solute and solvent. Solute is always added up in the solvent. Just remember this. Now you will see that is there only solute in always in the solid state? So no, solute can be in liquid state, and solvent can also be in gaseous state and as solid state also. Let's look for some example. Here are some examples of different states in the solution. The first example is gas in gas. Now identify the solute and solvent. So they have given the example oxygen in nitrogen. That means oxygen is your solute and nitrogen is your solvent. That is why we are adding the gas oxygen in nitrogen, and we know solute are always added up and they will form nitrous oxide as the solution, as their products. The second example is gas in liquid. We all drink Mirinda and some different kinds of drinks. What is there in that drink? So they mix, how they make this drink is they mix gas and liquid. So they add up carbon dioxide gas in water. So what is the solute here? The solute is carbon dioxide and the solvent is water. We are adding carbon dioxide in water. Third example is liquid in liquid. For various fertilization, what we do, we add small quantity of a liquid in a liquid. For example, they are adding up alcohol in water. So here alcohol is a solute because it has been added in the water, and water will be your solvent. The fourth example is solid in liquid, which we saw previous. That salt is being added to water. So salt is your solute and water is your solvent. And the last example is solid in solid. When we add solid in solid, this process is called alloy making process. For example, here a brass alloy is made when zinc is added in a copper. So zinc is a solute and copper is your solvent. So this is how we differentiate between solute and solvent and how we form solutions. So now we are going to learn what are the types of solution. So there are three different types of solution. First is called unsaturated solution. The second one is called saturated solution. And the third is called supersaturated solution. Now what do you mean by unsaturated is, if you take one test tube of water and you add a pinch of salt in it, the salt will completely dissolve in the water. But the water have more capacity to dissolve the salt. So this is called an unsaturated solution. The second one is the saturated solution. We are going to take similar amount of water in this test tube and now we are going to add up a salt to its maximum level. That is, we are going to add 3 tablespoons of salt in this solution. Now what will happen? The water capacity of dissolving salt has completed. It cannot dissolve the salt more. So now this solution has become saturated. It cannot dissolve the salt more. And what is the supersaturated solution? When we add 1 test tube of water and 1 test tube of salt. So how can it dissolve? So this is called a supersaturated solution. The dissolving power of the water is getting over. Now the water cannot dissolve the salt and so the salt get crystallized. Let's look for some example. By an experimental work, it is found that 100 ml of water can dissolve about 36 gram of salt in it completely. So here we have taken 100 ml of water and now we are dissolving 30 grams of sodium chloride, that is our salt, in it. Now what will happen? We know 36 gram of salt can be dissolved in water, but we are taking only 30 gram. And when we dissolve it, this is called an unsaturated solution because the solution is having more capacity to dissolve the salt. So this solution is called unsaturated solution. Another example is, now we are adding 40 gram of sodium chloride to 100 ml of water. As we know, only 36 gram of sodium chloride can be dissolved in 100 ml of water. So what will happen is, the 4 gram of salt will remain at the bottom. It cannot be dissolved by the water. So this point is called saturated solution. The water cannot bond with the sodium chloride more. And now if I add 102 grams of sodium chloride to 100 ml of water, what do you think will happen? Will the salt be dissolved? No, because we know 100 ml of water can dissolve only 36 grams of salt. So this is, we call the solution as supersaturated solution. It will not dissolve the salt and it will form crystal substance in the beaker itself. So, to dissolve this substance in 100 ml, we will require to heat the solution for a longer period of time, and this solution will become a super saturated solution. When it becomes cool, you will find the crystals again formed in the beaker. So I hope you have learned the terms of what is solute and what is solvent. We always add solute to the solvent and we get a solution. And we have learned the types of solutions. The three types of solutions are saturated solution, unsaturated solution, and supersaturated solution. Now we are going to learn a new term, that is suspension. Now what is suspension? As we have studied about homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixtures, we come to know that homogeneous mixtures are called solutions because the two components are completely dissolving and forming a solution, a clear solution. Whereas a heterogeneous mixture, the molecules are not dissolving in each other, or the molecules are not completely dissolving in each other and forming, and these particles are visible, so we call it as heterogeneous mixtures. So heterogeneous mixtures are called as suspension and homogeneous mixtures are called as solution. So I think now you know what do you mean by suspension. If we add a talcum powder in a beaker, what will happen? We can observe the talcum powder in the beaker. The substance will not be soluble in the water. So that will settle down at the bottom and we can see that this solution is not clear. This is what we call as suspension. You can take another example of suspension as sand and water. If you add sand in the water, you can clearly see that the sand will not dissolve in water. So you will not call this as a solution, you will call it as a suspension mixture. We are calling it as mixture because it does not contain the molecules of water and sand, but the sand is also containing other impurities and other minerals. Now just try to identify the solution and suspension from this picture. From the first picture, we have added a food color in water. You can see the first beaker is completely transparent. You can just see through it. You cannot see any particle moving in the solution. So we call it as a solution because it is completely transparent and it is a mixture, we know. The second example is milk. As we all know, milk is just not made up of one component. It is made up of different components. It contains minerals, it contains fats, and it contains water also. So milk is not transparent. Milk comes under heterogeneous mixtures. So we call it as suspension. The third beaker has solid substance dissolved in it, and we can clearly see that the substance have not been dissolved in the solution, in the water. The substance has not been dissolved in the water. So we know that it is a suspension. We will call it as suspension because the particles are settling down at the bottom and not getting mixed up in the solution. Now you have to identify from this picture what is solution and what is suspension. Try to solve it and write down in your classwork book about this. Now we are going to study one law. That law is called Law of Conservation of Mass. Let us see what is this law. So the law of conservation of mass was stated by the scientist named as Lavoisier. He was a French chemist. He stated matter as matter cannot be created nor destroyed in any chemical reaction. Now why he stated this was when he was doing an experiment, he found out that whatever reactant he was taken while doing the reaction, he find the same reactant present in the product and no more other reactants were formed. No other reactants was found except the molecule which he have taken in the reactants. You can see the example. There are 4 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms in the reactant. So when the chemical reaction occur, they will form a product. And what do you think they will form? Can you guess? Yes, this hydrogen atom will combine with oxygen and they will form 2 moles of water molecules. Correct? It will be H2O twice. Let us look for one more example. In this example, we have taken oxygen element and carbon element. We have taken 50 grams of oxygen element and we have taken 50 grams of carbon element, both in equal ratio. And when we have done the reaction, we get carbon dioxide. And the weight of that carbon dioxide gas was 100 grams. So you can see the matter was not being destroyed or not being gained the weight. It is same as it is. So this is how he stated law of conservation of mass, where matter is neither being created more nor been destroyed anymore. Let's look for one more example. In this example, you will find we have taken 4 elements of aluminium and 3 elements of oxygen. We all know oxygen contains 2 atoms. That is why we call it as O2. So when we combine this reaction, when the chemical reaction takes place, it will form 2 moles of aluminium trioxide. You just need to understand that whatever is forming in the product is all being taken up from the reactant and it is not being taken from anywhere. We are not taking any reactants or we are not forming any other products. As you can see in this example, 4 elements of aluminium are there in the reactant and that 4 elements are only present in our product and 6 atoms of oxygen are present in our reactant. In similar way, 6 atoms of oxygen are present in our product. So this is how he concluded that matter is not being created more and not being destroyed. So that is how our homogeneous solution and heterogeneous solution is formed. The elements of sugar get dissolved in water and form a solution, and we call it as homogeneous solution because the particles are completely miscible here, and whatever amount of sugar is taken, the particles of sugar that are completely dissociated in the solution. And in heterogeneous solution also, you can see that whatever the amount of chalk you have taken, that has been added to water and they form a suspension. So this is how law of conservation of mass explained. So today we have learned about some new terms, that is called solvent and solute, and when they both mixed up they forms a solution. And we have learned the types of solution as unsaturated solution, where we added minimum amount of salt to the solvent, and second one was saturated solution, where we add enough amount of salt to the solvent, and third was super saturated solution, where we added exactly same amount of salt and solvent to each other and we get a super saturated solution. Then we learn what is suspension. So the suspension was when we add a solute to a solvent, it will not give you a solution, it will give you a suspension. The particles of the solute are not going to be dissolved in the solvent. So this is we called as suspension, and we stated solution as homogeneous mixture and suspension as heterogeneous mixtures. Then we studied about what is law of conservation of mass, and we come to know that the scientist Lavoisier has stated this statement, and he stated that matter can neither be created and neither be destroyed. That is, whatever we take in our reactant, we are going to get it in our product in the same amount. So I hope you all have understood about these new terms and new laws. Allah Hafiz.